The night was cold and the streets were empty. Kang Ti-ho walked alone through the back alleys of the industrial district. His hands were dirty from work and his back hurt from bending over engines all day. He was a mechanic. He fixed old machines that nobody else wanted to fix. It was honest work, but it did not pay much. Ti-ho was 38 years old. He had a kind face, but his eyes looked tired. 3 years ago, his wife died from a sickness that the doctors could not cure. Now he raised his daughter alone. Her name was Yuna, and she was 7 years old. She was waiting for him at home right now, probably already asleep on the couch with the television still playing. He walked faster. The wind was getting stronger and he did not bring a jacket. The alley he took was a shortcut. It smelled like garbage and old food. Most people avoided this place at night. There were stories about bad things happening here. Gangs, criminals, worse. But Ti-ho was not afraid. He had nothing worth stealing, just a tired body and an empty wallet. Then he heard it. A small sound, like crying, like a child crying. Ti-ho stopped walking. He listened carefully. The sound came from somewhere deeper in the alley behind the large metal garbage containers. He thought about ignoring it. He thought about walking away. It was not his problem. He had his own daughter to worry about. But the crying continued. It was so small, so scared. Ti-ho sighed and walked toward the sound. Behind the garbage containers in the shadows, he saw something that made his heart stop. A small figure was crouching on the ground. At first, he thought it was a human child. But then the figure looked up at him, and he saw her face. Her skin was pale blue, like the color of ice. Her eyes were large and silver, shining in the darkness like little moons. She had no hair on her head but soft ridges that went from her forehead to the back of her neck. She was small, maybe 4 or 5 years old in human terms. She was a Velari. Ti-ho knew about the Velari. Everyone did. They came to Earth 10 years ago when their home world was destroyed by a war with another alien race. Millions of them arrived as refugees looking for safety, but Earth was not kind to them. Humans blamed them for everything. The food shortages, the job losses, the economic collapse. It was not the Velari's fault, but people needed someone to blame. Now most Velari lived in camps outside the cities. Some tried to live among humans, but it was dangerous. There were gangs who hunted them, groups who believed that Earth should be only for humans. They called themselves Pure Earth, and they were everywhere. The little Velari girl looked up at Ti-ho with tears running down her blue cheeks. She reached out and grabbed his coat with her tiny fingers. "Sir," she said in broken Korean. Her voice was shaking. "Sir, please, Mommy cannot walk. Mommy is hurt. Please help." Ti-ho felt his chest tighten. He looked around. The alley was empty. No one else was here, just him and this terrified child. "Where is your mother?" he asked. The girl pointed deeper into the alley, toward the darkest corner where the lights did not reach. Ti-ho hesitated. This could be a trap. He had heard stories about people getting robbed this way. But looking at the girl's face, at her tears, at the way her small body was shaking from cold and fear, he knew this was not a trick. This was a child who needed help. Ti-ho followed her. The girl led him to a narrow space between 2 old buildings. There, lying against a dirty wall, was a woman. She was also Velari, with the same blue skin and silver eyes, but her eyes were half closed and her breathing was slow and weak. Ti-ho saw dark liquid on her clothes. Blood. Velari blood was darker than human blood, almost purple. She had a wound on her side. Someone had hurt her badly. The woman opened her eyes when she heard them coming. Fear filled her face. She tried to move away, tried to protect her daughter, but she was too weak. She could barely lift her arms. "Please," she whispered, "please do not hurt her, take me. Do what you want to me, but please not my daughter, she is just a child." Ti-ho felt something break inside his heart. This mother, bleeding and dying, still thought only about her daughter. She expected him to hurt them. She expected cruelty because that was all she had known from humans. "I am not going to hurt you," T-Ho said quietly. He knelt down beside her and looked at her wound. It was bad, very bad. She needed medical help soon or she would die. The little girl stood beside him, still crying. "Bad men came," she said. "Bad men with sticks and fire. They hurt Mommy. We ran and ran, but Mommy fell down. She cannot walk anymore." T-Ho understood. Pure Earth. Those monsters had done this. They had attacked a mother and her child for no reason other than the color of their skin. He made a decision. It was a dangerous decision. It was probably a stupid decision. Helping aliens was against the law. If anyone found out, he could go to prison. He could lose his job. He could lose Yuna. But T-Ho looked at the little girl and he saw his own daughter. He looked at the mother, bleeding and scared, and he remembered his own wife in her final days. How she fought to stay alive for Yuna. How she never stopped being a mother, even when she was dying. He could not walk away. He could not leave them here to die. T-Ho stood up and took off his work shirt. He wrapped it around the mother's wound to slow the bleeding. Then, very carefully, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected. Too light. She probably had not eaten in days. The woman looked at him with confusion. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you helping us? You are human." T-Ho did not answer right away. He adjusted his grip on her and looked at the little girl. "What is your name?" he asked the child. "Lyra," she said softly. "Lyra," T-Ho repeated. "That is a pretty name. My daughter's name is Yuna. I think you two will be good friends." Lyra's silver eyes went wide. She did not understand what he meant. T-Ho reached out his free hand to her. "Hold my hand," he said. "Do not let go. I am going to take you somewhere safe. I am going to take you to my home." Lyra looked at his hand for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and took it. Her fingers were cold and small in his palm. Together they walked out of the alley and into the night. The mother in his arms finally let herself cry, not from pain, but from something else, something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. T-Ho did not know what would happen tomorrow. He did not know how he would hide them or feed them or keep them safe. He had no plan. He had no money. He had nothing but a small apartment and a daughter who was waiting for him. But somehow that felt like enough. Sometimes doing the right thing does not need a plan. Sometimes it just needs someone brave enough to take the first step. And T-Ho had taken that step. There was no going back now. T-Ho's apartment was small and old. The walls had cracks. The floor made sounds when you walked on it, but it was warm and it was safe, and right now, that was all that mattered. He carried Nea, the Velari mother, through the door as quietly as he could. Little Lyra followed behind him, still holding onto the back of his pants like a scared kitten. The clock on the wall showed almost midnight. The television was on in the living room, playing some cartoon with the sound turned low. And there, on the old couch, was Yuna. She was sleeping with her head on a pillow, her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. She always waited for her father to come home, even when he worked late. T-Ho carried Nea to his bedroom and laid her gently on the bed. Her eyes were closed now, and her breathing was shallow. The bleeding had slowed because of the shirt he wrapped around her, but she needed real medicine, real help. "Stay here with your mother," he whispered to Lyra. "I will be right back." Lyra nodded and climbed onto the bed beside Nea. She took her mother's hand and held it tight. T-Ho went to the bathroom and opened the small cabinet above the sink. Inside, he had some basic medical supplies. Bandages, cleaning liquid, some pills for pain. It was not much, but it would have to do. He could not take Nea to a hospital. They would ask questions. They would report her. The police would come, and then the Pure Earth gangs would find out, and then... He shook his head. He could not think about that now. When he returned to the bedroom, Nea was awake. Her silver eyes were open, looking around the small room with fear and confusion. When she saw T-Ho, she tried to sit up. "No, do not move," Tiho said firmly. He sat on the edge of the bed and began to clean her wound. It was deep, but thankfully it had not hit anything important inside her body. She would survive if the wound did not get infected. "You should not have brought us here," Nea said. Her voice was weak but steady. "You are putting yourself in danger if they find us here." "They will not find you," Tiho said. He did not know if that was true, but he said it anyway. Nea studied his face as he worked. He could feel her eyes on him, watching every movement. She was trying to understand him, trying to figure out why he was doing this. "We have been on Earth for 2 years," Nea finally said. 2 years, and you are the first human who has helped us. Everyone else has been cruel or afraid or both. Why are you different?" Tiho did not answer right away. He finished cleaning the wound and began to wrap it with bandages. His hands moved carefully, gently. "I am not different," he said at last. "I am just a man, a father. When I saw your daughter crying in that alley, I did not see an alien. I saw a scared child. I saw my own daughter." Nea's eyes became wet with tears. She looked at Lyra, who had fallen asleep beside her, exhausted from fear and crying. "Her father died on our home world," Nea whispered. "Before we escaped. He gave his life so we could reach the refugee ships. She does not remember him much anymore. She was so young." Tiho felt the weight of those words in his chest. Loss. He understood loss very well. "My wife died 3 years ago," he said quietly. "Sickness. Yuna barely remembers her either. I keep pictures around the house so she will not forget her face." For a moment, they were not a human and an alien. They were just two parents who had lost too much and were trying to keep going for their children. Nea reached out and touched Tiho's hand. Her skin was cool, but her touch was gentle. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for saving my daughter. Even if something bad happens to me tomorrow, I will never forget what you did tonight." Before Tiho could respond, he heard a small voice behind him. "Daddy." He turned around. Yuna was standing in the doorway, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Her stuffed rabbit hung from her hand, dragging on the floor. She looked at the bed, at the strange blue-skinned woman and the small blue-skinned girl sleeping beside her. Tiho held his breath. He did not know how Yuna would react. She was only 7. She had seen the things on television about aliens. She had heard other children at school say mean things about them. Yuna walked slowly into the room. She looked at Lyra for a long moment. Then she looked up at her father. "Is she sick, Daddy, like Mommy was?" Tiho felt his heart break a little at those words. He knelt down to be at Yuna's level. "She is hurt," he said softly. "Some bad people hurt her. She needs our help." Yuna thought about this. Then she walked to the bed and looked at Lyra more closely. The little alien girl had woken up from the sounds and was now staring at Yuna with wide, frightened eyes. The two children looked at each other. Then Yuna held out her stuffed rabbit. "Here," she said. "This is Bomi. She helps me feel better when I am scared. You can hold her if you want." Lyra looked at the rabbit, then at Yuna, then at her mother. Nea gave a small nod. Slowly, carefully, Lyra reached out and took the stuffed rabbit. She held it close to her chest. "Thank you," Lyra whispered. Yuna smiled. "Your eyes are pretty, they look like stars." A tiny smile appeared on Lyra's face. It was the first time she had smiled in days. Tiho watched this moment and felt something warm spread through his chest. Children did not see the world the way adults did. They did not care about politics or fear or hate. They just saw another child who needed a friend. "Yuna," Tiho said, "Lyra and her mother are going to stay with us for a little while. But we cannot tell anyone, okay? It has to be our secret." Yuna's eyes went wide with excitement. "A secret, like a secret mission." Tiho smiled. "Yes, like a secret mission, and it is very important. Can you do that for me?" Yuna nodded seriously. "I can keep secrets. I never told anyone about the time you burned the rice and we had to eat instant noodles for dinner." Despite everything, Tiho laughed. It was a real laugh, something he had not done in a long time. Over the next few hours, they made a plan. Naya would stay in the bedroom and rest. Lyra would stay inside at all times. Yuna would go to school like normal and act like nothing had changed. T-Ho would go to work and buy extra food on the way home. It was a simple plan, maybe too simple, but it was all they had. As the first light of morning came through the window, T-Ho sat in his kitchen, drinking cold coffee and staring at the wall. In the bedroom, Naya was finally sleeping peacefully. In the living room, Yuna and Lyra had fallen asleep together on the couch, the stuffed rabbit between them. Naya had asked him earlier that night after Yuna went back to sleep. She asked him again, why did he help them? T-Ho had given her an honest answer. Because someone helped me once, he said. When my wife got sick, we had no money. The hospital wanted to turn us away. But a doctor, an old man who did not even know us, he paid for her treatment. He said everyone deserves kindness. He said it costs nothing to be good. T-Ho paused, staring at the floor. My wife still died in the end. The sickness was too strong. But that doctor gave us more time. 3 extra months. 3 months of saying goodbye. 3 months of holding her hand. That meant everything to me. He looked at Naya. So when your daughter asked me for help, I thought about that doctor. I thought about what he would do, and I knew I could not walk away. Naya was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke. Humans are strange, she said softly. On Velari, we believed your kind was violent and selfish. We feared you. But now I see that we were wrong. Some of you are different. Some of you have hearts bigger than your world. T-Ho shook his head. I am not special. There are many humans who would do the same thing. Perhaps, Naya said, but not many who would risk everything for strangers. That is rare on any world. T-Ho did not know what to say, so he just nodded and stood up. Get some sleep, he said. You are safe now, I promise. And as he walked out of the room, he hoped that promise was one he could keep. 3 days passed, and something wonderful happened. The small apartment that once felt empty and sad began to feel like a home again. Yuna and Lyra became best friends almost overnight. They did not share the same language perfectly. Lyra's Korean was broken and simple, learned from watching human broadcasts in the refugee camps. But children do not need perfect words to understand each other. They communicated with smiles and gestures and laughter. Yuna taught Lyra how to play with building blocks. Lyra taught Yuna a clapping game from Velari, one that her own mother had taught her. They drew pictures together on old paper that T-Ho brought from work. Yuna drew houses and trees. Lyra drew strange alien flowers and a sky with 2 suns. Naya was getting stronger each day. The wound was healing well, and she could now sit up and walk slowly around the room. She was still weak, but the fear in her eyes was starting to fade. She spent most of her time watching the 2 girls play, and sometimes a small smile would appear on her thin blue lips. T-Ho came home every evening with food. He bought extra at the market, telling the seller that he had family visiting from another city. The seller believed him. Why would she not? He was just a regular man buying vegetables and rice. But T-Ho was not stupid. He knew that this peace could not last forever. Every day he passed by posters on the street. Pictures of Velari refugees with the words, "Report illegal aliens," printed in big red letters. Every night he heard news on the television about Pure Earth rallies, about attacks on Velari communities, about new laws making it harder for aliens to exist on Earth. The world outside was getting more dangerous, and inside his little apartment, 2 aliens were depending on him to keep them safe. On the 4th morning, the danger came closer. T-Ho was getting ready for work when he heard voices in the hallway outside his door. He pressed his ear against the wood and listened. Seen anything strange? Any unusual visitors in the building? The voice was male, cold, and official sounding. Another voice answered. It was old and shaky. T-Ho recognized it. It belonged to Beek Sung-ho, his neighbor from across the hall. Sung-ho was a quiet man in his 70s who lived alone and minded his own business. "No, sir," Sung-ho said. "I have not seen anything. I stay inside most of the time. My legs do not work so well anymore." "We had reports of a Velari woman and child in this area," the cold voice said. "They escaped from a correction facility. If you see anything, you must report it immediately. There is a reward." Tiho's blood went cold. They were looking for Naya and Lyra. The Pure Earth gang must have reported them to the authorities, or maybe the authorities were Pure Earth. It was hard to tell the difference these days. He moved quickly. He went to the bedroom where Naya was resting and put a finger to his lips. She understood immediately and pulled Lyra close, covering them both with blankets. For several minutes, Tiho sat frozen in his kitchen, listening. He heard doors being knocked on. He heard the men asking the same questions to other neighbors, but no one knocked on his door. Finally, after what felt like hours, the voices faded. The men left the building. Tiho waited another 30 minutes before letting out the breath he had been holding. That afternoon, when he came home from work, old man Sung-ho was waiting in the hallway. Tiho's heart started beating fast. Did Sung-ho know? Had he seen something? Was he going to turn them in for the reward money? But Sung-ho did not look angry or suspicious. He just looked tired and sad, the way old men look when they have seen too much in their lives. "Kang Tiho," Sung-ho said quietly, "can we talk inside?" Tiho hesitated. Then he nodded and opened his door. Inside the apartment, Yuna and Lyra were playing quietly in the living room. When they saw the old man, they both went silent and still. Naya appeared in the bedroom doorway, her silver eyes wide with fear. Sung-ho looked at them. He looked at the Velari mother and child for a long, long moment. Tiho prepared himself for the worst. He prepared himself to beg, to fight, to do whatever he had to do to protect them. But Sung-ho did not shout or threaten or run away. Instead, he slowly sat down on a kitchen chair, his old bones making sounds as he moved. "I had a grandson," Sung-ho said. His voice was quiet and filled with old pain. His name was Min-soo, smart boy, studied engineering at the university, good future ahead of him. Tiho did not understand where this was going, but he stayed silent and listened. 10 years ago, when the Velari first came, Min-soo was working at the refugee center, helping them, teaching them Korean. Everyone told him to stop. His parents, his friends, they said it was dangerous. They said it would ruin his career. Sung-ho paused and looked at his wrinkled hands. But Min-soo did not care. He said they were just people, just families who lost their homes. He could not turn away from that. The old man looked up at Naya. He met a Velari woman at the center. Her name was Tira. They fell in love. When the laws got stricter, when it became illegal for humans and Velari to marry, they left Earth together. They went to a colony world far away. I have not seen my grandson in 8 years. Tears appeared in Sung-ho's eyes. I get a message from him every few months. He is happy. They have a child now, half human, half Velari. I have never met my great-grandchild. I probably never will. These old legs cannot travel to the stars. Sung-ho reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He pressed it into Tiho's hands. "This is money, not much, just my savings. Use it to buy medicine for the mother. Use it to buy food. Do whatever you need to do to keep them safe." Tiho stared at the envelope. He could not speak. He did not know what to say. "I saw them come in with you that first night," Sung-ho admitted. "I am old, but my eyes still work. I knew immediately what you were doing. I said nothing to those men this morning. I will never say anything. Your secret is safe with me." Naya stepped forward, limping slightly on her healing leg. She bowed her head to the old man, a gesture of deep respect among her people. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for your kindness." Sung-ho waved his hand. "Do not thank me. I did nothing. I am just an old man who misses his grandson." He looked at Lyra, who was peeking at him from behind Yuna. When I look at that little girl, I see my great-grandchild, the one I will never hold. That child deserves to live and grow up happy. They all do. He stood up slowly and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back to T-Ho. Be careful, he said. Those men will come back. Pure Earth has spies everywhere. They are offering money for information and people are desperate these days. Someone might talk. T-Ho nodded. I know, I am thinking about a plan. Sung-Ho nodded. Good. If there is anything else this old man can do to help, you know where to find me. And then he was gone. That night, after everyone was asleep, T-Ho sat alone in the dark kitchen. He held the envelope of money in his hands. It was heavy with coins and old bills, more money than he expected. He thought about Sung-Ho. He thought about the grandson who fell in love with an alien and left everything behind. He thought about how hate and love existed side by side in this world, sometimes in the same building. He knew Sung-Ho was right. They could not stay here forever. Sooner or later, someone would talk. Sooner or later, pure Earth would find them. T-Ho needed a real plan. He needed to get Nea and Lyra somewhere truly safe. He remembered hearing about a place called the Refugee Transit Station. It was outside the city, run by a galactic organization that helped displaced aliens. If Nea and Lyra could reach it, they could board a ship and leave Earth forever. They could find a new world, a better world, a world where no one would hunt them for the color of their skin. But the transit station was 2 hours away by car. The roads were dangerous. There were checkpoints everywhere. T-Ho looked at his old cargo truck parked outside the window. It was slow and ugly, but it could make the journey. Could he do this? Could he risk everything to drive 2 aliens across a hostile country? He thought about Yuna. What would happen to her if he got caught? Who would take care of her? But then he thought about Lyra, about her silver eyes and her tiny smile, about the way she held Yuna's stuffed rabbit like it was the most precious thing in the world. If he did nothing, Lyra would have no future at all. T-Ho made his decision. Tomorrow night they would run. The night was dark and filled with clouds. No moon, no stars, just endless black sky above them. T-Ho thought this was good. Darkness meant hiding. Darkness meant safety. He loaded the last bag into his old cargo truck and looked back at the apartment building. His home for the last 10 years. The place where he brought his wife after their wedding. The place where Yuna was born. The place where he cried alone in the kitchen after the funeral. He did not know if he would ever see it again. Daddy, are we going on an adventure? T-Ho looked down at Yuna. She was dressed in warm clothes, her stuffed rabbit Bomi tucked under her arm. Her eyes were bright with excitement. She did not understand the danger. To her, this was just a late-night trip with her father and her new friends. Yes, sweetheart, T-Ho said, forcing a smile. A big adventure, but you need to be very quiet and very brave. Can you do that for me? Yuna nodded seriously. I can be brave. Lyra says I am the bravest human she ever met. T-Ho felt his heart squeeze. He picked up his daughter and hugged her tight. Behind him, Nea and Lyra emerged from the building. Nea was walking on her own now, though still slowly. The wound was healing, but she was not fully recovered. Still, she refused to be carried. She said she needed to walk. She said her daughter needed to see that she was strong. Old man Sung-Ho appeared in the doorway of the building. He did not come outside. That would be too dangerous. But he raised his hand in a small wave. A goodbye, a blessing. T-Ho waved back. Let us go, he said. We have a long drive ahead. They got into the truck. Nea and Lyra sat in the back seat. T-Ho gave them blankets to cover themselves in case they needed to hide quickly. Yuna sat in the front with her father, too excited to sleep. The truck coughed and rumbled to life. T-Ho pulled out of the parking spot and drove into the night. The first hour was quiet. The streets of Neo-Seoul were mostly empty this late. A few delivery trucks, some taxis, Nothing suspicious. Tiho kept his eyes on the road and his hands steady on the wheel. Yuna eventually fell asleep, her head resting against the window. In the back, Lyra was also sleeping, curled up next to her mother. Only Nea stayed awake, watching the city lights pass by like distant stars. "How far is the transit station?" Nea asked softly. "About 2 more hours," Tiho replied. "We should arrive before sunrise." Nea was quiet for a moment, then she spoke again. "I have been thinking about what happens after we leave Earth, after we find a new home." Tiho kept his eyes on the road. "What about it?" "I want Lyra to remember you," Nea said. "I want her to remember that not all humans are cruel. I want her to know that a stranger saved our lives because he believed it was the right thing to do." Tiho did not know how to respond to that. He just nodded slightly. They drove on in silence. 50 kilometers outside the city, everything changed. Tiho saw the lights first, bright white lights blocking the road ahead. As they got closer, he realized it was a checkpoint. Police vehicles were parked across the highway. Officers in dark uniforms stood beside them, checking every car that passed. But these were not normal police. Tiho saw the patches on their arms, a black circle with a white fist inside, the symbol of pure earth. His blood turned to ice. "Nea," he said, keeping his voice calm, "you and Lyra need to hide now." Nea did not hesitate. She pulled the blankets over herself and Lyra, pressing them both down onto the floor of the back seat. In seconds, they looked like nothing more than a pile of old cloth. Yuna woke up from the sudden movement. "Daddy, what is happening?" "Just a small stop, sweetheart," Tiho said. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. "Stay calm, everything is fine." The truck slowed as they approached the checkpoint. An officer stepped forward and shined a flashlight into the window. Tiho rolled it down. "Good evening, sir," the officer said. His voice was flat and cold. "Where are you heading at this hour?" "My mother's house," Tiho lied smoothly. "She lives in the countryside. She called and said she was feeling sick. I am taking my daughter to see her." The officer looked at Yuna. Then he looked into the back seat at the pile of blankets. "What is in the back?" "Just supplies, clothes, some medicine for my mother, old blankets." The officer walked around to the side of the truck and shined his flashlight through the back window. Tiho held his breath. If the officer looked closely enough, he would see the shape of bodies under those blankets. If he asked Tiho to open the door, everything would be over. Seconds passed. They felt like hours. Then Yuna started to cry. At first, Tiho thought something was wrong. But when he looked at his daughter, he saw that she was pretending. Her face was twisted into a perfect picture of sadness, tears running down her cheeks. "Daddy, I am scared," she wailed. "Is Grandma going to die? I do not want Grandma to die. We need to go fast." The officer looked startled. He was not expecting a crying child. He stepped back from the window, looking uncomfortable. "Please, sir," Tiho said, playing along. "My daughter is very close to her grandmother. We need to get there as soon as possible. You know how children are." The officer hesitated. Behind him, other cars were lining up. He needed to keep the line moving. "Fine," he said roughly. "Go, but if you see any aliens on the road, report them immediately. There is a reward." "Of course, sir. Thank you, sir." Tiho rolled up the window and drove through the checkpoint. His hands were shaking on the wheel. When they were far enough away, Yuna stopped crying and smiled at her father. "Did I do good, Daddy? I remembered what you said about being brave." Tiho let out a long, shaky breath. He reached over and squeezed her hand. "You did amazing, sweetheart. You saved us." In the back, Nea pushed off the blankets. Her face was pale with fear, but her eyes were filled with something else. Admiration, gratitude. "Your daughter," she whispered. "She is remarkable." Tiho nodded. "She gets it from her mother." They drove on. The rest of the journey was tense but quiet. They passed two more small checkpoints, but none of them stopped the truck. Maybe they looked too ordinary. Maybe luck was on their side. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, T-Ho saw it. The refugee transit station. It was a large complex of white buildings surrounded by tall fences. Ships of different sizes sat on landing pads, ready to carry passengers to worlds beyond the stars. Hope filled his chest. But that hope died quickly. A large crowd was blocking the main entrance to the station. Not refugees, not officials, men and women in dark clothes carrying signs and weapons. T-Ho recognized the symbol on their flags. Pure Earth. They had gotten here first. Somehow they had known. Somehow they had found out where Naya and Lyra were going. And now they were waiting. T-Ho stopped the truck a safe distance away. His heart sank into his stomach. "No," Naya whispered from the back seat. "No, no, no, we were so close. We were so close." Lyra started crying. She knew what those flags meant. She had seen them before, on the night her mother was attacked. Yuna looked at the crowd with confusion. "Daddy, who are those people? Why are they angry?" T-Ho did not answer. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. They had come so far, they had risked everything. And now, at the final step, their path was blocked by hate. For a moment, T-Ho felt despair. He felt like giving up. Maybe this was a fight he could not win. Maybe he was foolish to ever believe he could make a difference. But then he looked at Lyra, at her tear-streaked face, at her silver eyes filled with fear. And he remembered why he started this journey. He turned off the engine and opened the door. "Stay here," he told Naya. "Keep the children safe. I am going to see if there is another way." Naya grabbed his arm. "You cannot go out there alone. They will hurt you." T-Ho looked at her and smiled. It was a sad smile, but also a brave one. "Maybe," he said, "but I have to try." And he stepped out of the truck. T-Ho walked toward the mob alone. His legs felt weak, but he kept moving. The morning sun was rising behind him, casting a long shadow in front of his feet. The shadow looked braver than he felt. The Pure Earth crowd saw him coming. Some of them laughed. Others pointed and shouted insults. There were maybe 50 or 60 of them, men and women of all ages, united by hate. They held signs that said things like "Earth for humans" and "Aliens go home." Some carried metal pipes and wooden clubs. At the front of the crowd stood their leader. He was a tall man with a shaved head and cold eyes. He wore a leather jacket covered with Pure Earth patches. When he saw T-Ho approaching, he stepped forward with a cruel smile. "Look at this," the leader called out loudly. "A human who protects the enemy. What is wrong with you, friend? Do you not know what these creatures have done to our world?" T-Ho stopped walking. He was now close enough to see the hate in their eyes, close enough to smell the anger coming off them like heat from a fire. "I am not your friend," T-Ho said. His voice was calm. "And those aliens have done nothing to you. They are just a mother and daughter looking for safety. They just want to live." The leader laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Live on whose planet? They came here uninvited. They took our jobs, they ate our food, they polluted our streets, and now you want us to feel sorry for them." The crowd cheered in agreement. T-Ho shook his head. They did not choose to come here. Their world was destroyed. They had nowhere else to go. What would you do if your home was burning? Would you not run to anywhere that might offer shelter? The leader's smile faded. He stepped closer to T-Ho until they were face to face. "I would fight," he said. "I would die for my world. That is what real men do. But these aliens ran away like cowards, and people like you welcome them with open arms. You are a traitor to your own kind." T-Ho felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Anger would not help him here. "I am not a traitor," he said quietly. "I am just a father, and when a child asks me for help, I cannot say no. It does not matter what color her skin is or what planet she comes from. She is still a child. She still deserves a chance. The leader grabbed T-Ho's shirt and pulled him close. You are making a mistake, friend. Walk away now and maybe we will let you go. Keep talking and things will get ugly. T-Ho looked into the man's eyes. He saw nothing there. No kindness, no understanding, just emptiness and rage. I am not leaving, T-Ho said. Not without them. The leader raised his fist. The crowd moved forward, ready to attack. And then a voice called out from behind. He is not alone. Everyone turned to look. An old man was walking toward them, slowly and carefully. It was Baek Sung-ho. He must have followed them all the way from the city. His old legs were shaking from the effort, but his eyes were steady. I stand with this man, Sung-ho said, and I stand with those aliens. My own grandson married one of them, and he is the best person I have ever known. The Pure Earth leader frowned. Go home, old man, this does not concern you. But Sung-ho kept walking until he stood beside T-Ho. Then another voice joined them. I stand with them too. It was a woman from the crowd, a young woman, maybe 25 years old. She pushed through the mob and walked to stand beside T-Ho and Sung-ho. Her hands were shaking, but she stood firm. My coworker is Velari, she said. She helped me when my mother was sick. She stayed with me for 3 days in the hospital. I am not going to let you hurt her people. The leader's face turned red with anger. Traitor, you are all traitors. But more people were stepping forward now. A man in a worker's uniform, a teenager with a backpack, an old woman with a cane. One by one, they left the crowd and walked to stand beside T-Ho. Not everyone, not even half, but enough to form a line, enough to stand between the hate and the gate. The leader looked at his shrinking mob. He saw doubt on some faces, fear on others. The crowd that once seemed so powerful was now breaking apart. What are you all doing? He shouted. Are you going to let aliens take over our planet? No one answered. The silence was louder than any words. From inside the transit station, sirens started to ring. Security forces had finally noticed the commotion. Blue lights flashed as official vehicles approached the gate. The Pure Earth members looked at each other nervously. Fighting against a few citizens was one thing. Fighting against station security was another. This is not over, the leader spat at T-Ho. We will find you, we will find them. Earth belongs to humans. Then he turned and walked away. His followers went with him, disappearing down the road like shadows running from the sun. T-Ho let out a breath he did not know he was holding. His legs finally gave out, and he sat down on the ground, shaking. Sung-ho sat down beside him. That was very brave, young man, or very stupid, maybe both. T-Ho laughed weakly. How did you even get here? I have a car, Sung-ho said. An old one, slower than your truck, but I know shortcuts. The young woman who had joined them knelt beside T-Ho. Are the aliens okay? The mother and daughter you were protecting? T-Ho nodded. They are in my truck back there. The woman smiled. Let us bring them in. The gates are opening now. T-Ho stood up with help from Sung-ho. Together, they walked back to the truck. When he opened the door, Naya and Lyra were still hiding under the blankets. Yuna was holding Lyra's hand, whispering words of comfort. It is okay, T-Ho said softly. You can come out now, it is safe. Naya pushed off the blankets and looked at him with wide eyes. She saw the open gates. She saw the security officers keeping the peace. She saw the ship waiting to take her and her daughter to a new world. Tears fell from her silver eyes. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. T-Ho helped her out of the truck. Lyra climbed down after her, still holding the stuffed rabbit that Yuna had given her. They walked toward the transit station together. The crowd of people who had stood up against hate walked with them, forming a protective circle. At the gate, Naya stopped. She turned to face T-Ho. I do not know how to thank you, she said. You risked everything for us. Your job, your safety, your daughter. Why did you do all this for strangers? T-Ho looked at Lyra. The little alien girl was looking up at him with those big silver eyes, the same eyes that had looked at him in that dark alley, filled with fear and hope. He knelt down so he was at her level. "Because you asked for help," he said simply, "and where I come from, that is enough." Lyra threw her arms around his neck and hugged him tight. T-Ho hugged her back, feeling the warmth of her small body against his. "Thank you," Lyra whispered in his ear. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." When she let go, Yuna stepped forward. She had tears in her eyes. "You have to go now," Yuna said to Lyra. "But you can keep Bomi. She will protect you on the spaceship." Lyra looked at the stuffed rabbit, then at Yuna. "But she is your special friend." Yuna shook her head. "You are my special friend. Bomi will remind you of me, and when I am older I will come visit you on your new planet. I promise." Lyra hugged Yuna so tight that both girls almost fell over. They laughed and cried at the same time. Naya watched them with a soft smile. Then she looked at T-Ho one last time. "Perhaps we will meet again," she said, "in this life or another." T-Ho nodded. "Perhaps. The universe is smaller than it used to be." A bell rang, calling passengers to board the ship. Naya took Lyra's hand and they walked through the gate together. At the entrance of the ship, Lyra turned and waved. Her silver eyes were shining like stars. Yuna waved back. And then they were gone. T-Ho stood at the gate for a long time, watching the ship prepare for launch. When it finally lifted off, rising into the sky like a silver bird, he felt something strange in his chest. Not sadness, not loss. Pride. He felt pride. He had done something good, something right, something that mattered. Yuna tugged on his hand. "Daddy, I am hungry. Can we get breakfast?" T-Ho laughed. It was a real laugh, full and warm. He picked up his daughter and put her on his shoulders. "Yes, sweetheart, let us get breakfast, and then let us go home." As they walked away from the transit station, the sun rose fully above the horizon. It was a new day. A day where one small act of kindness had defeated a mountain of hate. T-Ho did not know what the future held. He did not know if the world would get better or worse, but he knew one thing for certain. As long as there were people willing to stand up for each other, there was hope. And hope was enough. Somewhere far above, a ship carried a mother and daughter toward the stars. And in that mother's heart, she carried a memory that she would never forget. The memory of a human man who saw a crying child in an alley and chose to help. That was humanity at its best. That was the kind of humanity worth fighting for.